So a day before leaving town, I decided to try something. Buy a phone on Amazon and see if it's a good idea for a vacation. Then I thought about the ultimate test, a gaming phone. There are many gaming phones out now, most that have outrageous specs and prices, but some major downsides. But then it got me thinking, can you use a gaming phone in normal everyday usage? Let's find out. So the phone I'm going to use in this test is a Nubia REDMAGIC 6S Pro. This is a phone made by ZTE and is considered mid to high tier for the specs. I will briefly go over the specs in the video, but here they are right here. And I'm not going to lie and act like I game on phones all the time, because I don't. I used to, but I've spent more time on this channel and work, and most of the time I do my gaming on dedicated hardware like home consoles. Remember, this video is about gaming phones as a whole rather than a review on a specific phone. If you want to see my personal review on the Nubia 6S Pro, that review should be coming out soon and I'll have it in the description below. But let's get started with talking about actually using a gaming phone. In short, gaming phones generally max out specs in certain areas, sometimes allowing for overclocking, higher refresh rate screens, high RAM amounts, large batteries with fast charging, and ports with extra accessories. This also brings very large screens as well as large weight. We get some extremes like the ROG Phone 5S Pro with 18 GB of RAM and 238 grams of heft. And then we get modest phones like the Razer Phone 2 with 8 GB of RAM at 220 grams, although that is a couple years old and fairly conservative in the gaming space. There are no basic designs to gaming phones, giving us different colors, shapes, and styles on the back, reminding others that it's not just a phone. To me, I think that's boring. It's weird to see all this flashy stuff just to be beat out performance-wise by an iPhone 12 mini. Now, these are some huge specs that should last many years, and the added RAM should help with everyday tasks, and then way more. So longevity-wise, these seem like fairly good investments. However, the size, weight, and obviously software may be a concern over time. But with everyday usage, this phone was easier, but also frustrating. To start, my phone had a microphone issue where no one can hear me at all. This was with multiple people during 10 plus calls using different carriers and even in different countries. Rebooting the phone did not fix the issue until it just fixed itself. As for the call quality, it's not that bad, but again, might not be something that is focused on. Same with internet quality. Lots of times my phone would say 5G in the corner, yet speed tests would say otherwise. This is fine, really. Even if I'm using LTE Advanced and it's showing 5G, at least I know that my speeds are faster, but this was not the case at all. I would see a drop in areas where I would normally get signal in, and when it would drop to completely no service, it lasted a long time, making the phone useless in areas where normal performance is slow, but still usable. All of this may be an issue with this specific phone, but again, phone calls are not a high priority on gaming phones. Gaming is. Which brings me to the camera, which is always confusing. In this case, we are given a 64 megapixel camera with an 8 megapixel ultra-wide and a 2 megapixel macro lens. The macro isn't the worst, but I would also rather not have it be there at all, and maybe give us optical image stabilization on the main sensor, which is actually something that's hard to find in the gaming space. Funny enough, the Razer Phone 2 actually had optical image stabilization, but that's one of, if not the only phone that I can find that's gaming centered with OIS. Still, this means that you'll need to be stable with photos and videos, but even more, we're given 8K video out of these cameras, with this phone in particular supporting 10-bit HDR. It makes no sense to me, really. Now, the argument could be made that an external stabilizer could help solve this issue, but it's safe to say that cameras are generally afterthoughts. And when you get to the front cameras, come on. Just steal the $4 camera that the Samsung S21 Ultra has, add some software, and call it a day. Still, the cameras work for basic tasks like note-taking or work photos. But we'll talk a little bit more about the cameras in the next section. Battery life is generally going to be really good for a few reasons. So the screen refresh rate changing may just be on this phone, but this is actually one of the only phones that I've tested that actually shows a true change when I use it. The Samsung Z Fold 2 stays at a fixed 120 Hz, even though that can't be true. However, when I was using the REDMAGIC, you could actually see it drop and raise in real time, and this changed my whole view on high refresh rate screens altogether. Let me preface this by saying that you can lock it at whatever rate you want to choose, at least for this phone, and that this may be just on this specific phone and that's it. But I've watched some reviews about how silky smooth this 165Hz refresh rate is, and I'll tell you that's all placebo if the counter is to be trusted. And you can see that wonderful 165Hz across the UI, but open up a third-party app and boom, 90Hz, with some games and apps like YouTube giving us 60Hz. Now there is a way to bypass this, which is kind of hilarious to me. On the REDMAGIC, flick the switch and boom, now you're in a 90Hz launcher. Funny, right? But open up one of the apps with the Game Assist launcher and now it'll run at 120Hz or 60Hz or 90Hz. Notice that none of these games run at 165Hz. To save battery life it makes sense, but the super high refresh rate is something you rarely, if ever, even achieve. Let me remind you that the Pixel 4, Pixel 5, and OnePlus 7 Pro all give you 90Hz basic apps. And even the S21 series will give you 120Hz in games, just like gaming phones will, allegedly. Again, this is based on one gaming phone and I only tested it on a few games, but it is realistic to assume that it's going to be the same on other gaming phones. Of course, you can lock the frame rate, but again, if it's only pushing out 60 frames per second, that's all you're going to see. As well as a quick draining battery, but recharge rates are generally spectacular on gaming phones, like this one. Phones like this will feature single or dual cell batteries, as well as having high recharge rates that max out way over the 15 to 25 watts that the average phone has. We're talking about 66 or even 120 watts of charging speeds into these batteries that have a max of 18 or even 24 watt hours. In comparison, the massive S21 Ultra is rocking an 18 watt battery, while the iPhone 13 Pro has a modest 12 watt hour cell. So realistically, battery life should not be an issue even with gaming. Mainly because at max, the phone is going to be requesting 10 watts of power, and if your charger can supply 20 watts of power plus, you won't have to worry about this battery dying. The bottom middle mounting point is kind of strange on the 6S Pro, seeing that it should be either off to the side or on the actual left or right side of the device. But with normal usage, this won't be a concern. Then we have the actual OS, which is not going to be iOS, Pixel Android, or a Samsung variant. Instead, it's going to be a gaming one, which will vary. On phones like the REDMAGIC or the Razer phone, it's not so much in your face. You know, there's some app packages that can make the app icons look a little bit different, and most of the gaming aspects are going to be activated through apps or games. But the attention to detail is frustrating to me. An example, at least on this phone, is when playing in landscape mode and playing music, my notification shade literally becomes useless. There are various misspellings and weird phrases throughout the UI to the point where it kind of shows that these aren't viewed as lasting devices, but more of upgrades over time. This probably doesn't apply to more mainstream phones like the ROG, but come on, a nice visual experience is what keeps people hooked. I mean, look at the PlayStation 5, the ambience, the colors, the transitions. But also, we're talking about English, a language that is difficult to learn, but even a $99 Samsung phone nails this. I mean, look, we have an always-on display that doesn't always stay on, so most of these gaming phones end up being Android mixed with things you love, but might also be missing other features that you love as well. And now, here's the goal of the entire video. I've used a few gaming phones throughout the years, same with flagship phones and budget phones, but one thing I've never done is brought them on vacation with me. Generally, it's like a flagship Samsung, iPhone, or my OnePlus 7 Pro. This time, it was this phone and the iPhone 13 Pro, and I gotta say, it worked. Kind of. The cameras worked, I'll admit that, but lasting images is not what this is made for. Not to mention the lack of OIS anywhere. The video is super sloppy, but again, this is all on the REDMAGIC, so different phones may vary. Huge camera sensors like 64 megapixels, 8K video, macro and depth cameras are all features that are shared across most modern gaming phones, but they also share the fact that images and videos produced by these sensors are going to be decent to horrible. Battery life is overall going to last a long time and work pretty well, and like I said, have really fast charging. The signal issue I was talking about, well, that might be the difference of being able to get on the right train on the right time, or finding the nearest gas station. So having a good signal or modem that is optimized for your area and your SIM card is pretty important. Lack of water resistance on gaming phones is pretty common, so dips by the pool have to be planned accordingly, and don't even try to bring this on the beach like I did. But then when all of that is over and you come home and it's time to relax and play games, these phones will blaze through it. In theory, gaming on phones with a Snapdragon 865 chip or higher will yield you better graphics than something like a Nintendo Switch, so even GameCube emulation is going to look awesome. And of course, normal gaming is going to be outrageous and look and play spectacularly as well. And when the phones get hot, some of these phones even have fans, or they have external things that you can slap on there to cool it down. Although the former never really seemed to help in my situations. Some games just run hot. You might get some triggers on the corners or even on the back. And now we've come full circle to the whole reason that you buy a gaming phone. The high refresh rate and the immersive feeling of shutting out your work life and real life so you can just sit down and enjoy a whole different world. And that's what I feel you should understand. I feel like a parent telling kids not to play video games all day. For me, it makes sense to have it all at your fingertips, but at what cost? Most gaming phones aren't modest looking and scream gaming phone all the time, even if you don't want it to. And realistically, performance is very similar to non-gaming phones in the first place. I mean, most of these gaming phones come with the same processors that are found in non-gaming phones. But the only exception is the price. Some can be found as low as in the 500s, like something like a Black Shark 4, with ROG phones reaching up to the $1,500 range. To me, RGB means nothing. Air triggers are cool, but a physical controller is even better. Cooling, honestly, is pointless when the fan is this small. Usable features like double tap to wake and sleep, or a toggle for muting audio is more important to me than a physical toggle for gaming modes. I understand that gaming phones aren't for me, and that's why my last gaming phone was a Razer 2, one that barely even had RGB on it in the first place. But if gaming is important to you, it just makes sense. Just make sure you can buy the best you can, and not the cheapest. And that's all I wanted to talk about, whether or not you can use a gaming phone for an everyday phone. But what do you think? Do I have dumb opinions? Should I explore more situations like actually using folding phones? Let me know in the comment section or socials listed above, and as always, thanks for watching.